Okay, good morning, everyone. Today is February 28th, the last day of February, and it's time for your monthly curriculum committee meeting. I'll call the meeting to order, and I have one last-minute addition to the agenda. We're going to call that Life Sciences Curriculum for information only, and I will add that as item 9A prior to next meeting date. Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? If not, could I get a motion to approve?
Motion with the amended changes, please.
Thank you, Tina. All right, second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Aye. Curriculum committee minutes for approval. Does anyone have
motion
any?
To approve.
Motion to approve? No, go right ahead.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Item number 3, middle school classroom libraries. Dr. Breedlove, who's going to take the handoff on that?
Well, over the, as you remember, over the last couple of years, we have worked on elementary school libraries, and Union County Public Schools has invested about $1.5 million in our elementary school libraries to bring them up to speed where they really needed to be. We did an assessment and we're able to go in and outfit all of our elementary classrooms with quality leveled text. And so we've done the same thing this past year with looking at a needs assessment, and Dr. Healy is here to talk about the process and kind of where we are at this point moving forward with the purchasing of classroom libraries at our middle school. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Healy at this time.
Thank you. You may recall that right before the holiday, right before semester term, we came to you with a request for a purchase that we got in before the end of the year so we could get a really good deal of 50% off with all of our National Geographic selections. So I just wanted to update you on where we are right now. Just as a reminder, last spring, all of our coaches went in and inventoried our classrooms, our book rooms, to kind of see what we had in each of our middle schools. We solicited input from our teachers through some surveys by the coaches to see what were some areas of weakness they saw in the reading materials they had in their classroom, and took some of those titles, specific titles in some cases, or topics that they would like to see help with, and kind of massaged all that and began looking for resources that would benefit our classrooms. So we're in a little different situation than the elementaries because we don't have a lot in some of our classrooms. You know, if you think about science and social studies and math in a middle school, there's not a lot of text in there. There's not a lot of print in there. And so we are starting at a different place. Also from a literacy perspective, in the English classrooms, we've changed our focus from whole class novels to book clubs, and so that was something we are taking the opportunity to assist with. So a little different from what was happening in elementary, but definitely going to benefit all of our content classrooms at the middle school level. So some things that we focused on, we know that read alouds are not just for elementary school. Our middle school and even our high schoolers next year hopefully will benefit from having some of these books read aloud to them with a particular message, a hook, an engagement piece. We are putting together collections for each of the schools so that the teachers will have access to what we think of as a picture book, but there will be specific staff development that helps them know how to use those to engage the students in that content. And sometimes it's just a very positive message for them through some of these texts. We are focusing on book clubs, like I said. We purchase a set of 4 so that students can read in a book club together. They don't all read the same thing. They have some choice. They have some ways to pick what they're interested in. And a lot of the books we're focusing on are series books. So you'll hear me talk a little bit more about that. We have figured out pretty quickly that if we can get them hooked on a series, they read a lot more. They'll read book number 1 and book number 2 and book number 3, and they can't wait to get to book number 4. And so we're taking that approach. Different genres are represented in those book clubs throughout the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade year. So we hope that they have had a large volume of reading through these efforts. We also are looking at independent reading. They can simply go to the classroom library and make selections on their own. And some of those selections will be that 2nd and 3rd book of the series, as well as our media centers having some of those books for them. The other thing we wanted to do was make sure the books in our school look like the children in our school. So we've tried to be culturally responsive with some of the titles and selections that we've made. So we are ready with a couple of more orders. We have been working with the university, Columbia University and their Teachers College with our Readers and Writers project for several years now. And so this first request is through Heinemann, who is their publisher, to purchase some of the book sets that have been curated by the university and some of the teaching materials that go along with that. I mentioned last time, every school is not getting the exact same thing because some of them had more in their buildings to start with. And so some schools had greater needs than others. But part of the Columbia materials will give everyone the opportunity to have some of the book clubs that we've talked about and those teaching materials that go along with it that are part of our English language arts framework. To supplement that, there are some of the picture books I talked about that we would purchase from Barnes & Noble, some other series books that are not included in the Columbia set, math resources, science resources, all that would come from Barnes & Noble. We're not actually going to be running, large literacy programs through science and math, but there are texts that we want in those classrooms for the kids to have access to and for the teachers to use, maybe in stations as students rotate. There would be some text that they would use in addressing their math and science skills. Social studies also, but that was in the first purchase. We have an online source called Book Source that has collections also. Most of those are nonfiction. We are balancing that with, we use Myon to a great extent for our nonfiction piece at the middle school level, and so that's been a great addition, but there are some print texts we'd like to have, and BookSource, again, provides those collections already put together for us. And the last one on there is actually a piece that we thought we had ordered the first go-round when we did our National Geographic order, but because we had a change in our representatives for our account, the last page was left off. So we thought we had everything as we began to unpack the order because it's at the warehouse right now. We did figure out that the last page had been left off. So this is, again, putting back what we thought we had ordered the first time around. So with all of these purchase orders, that would put us right about a little over $500,000. There are a couple of things that we were waiting to sort of see if we had enough money for. And one is, I was mentioning those series books. Again, we are doing a lot with this book number 1 in those series, but we'd love to have in our independent libraries the additional books to the series so that the children can choose to go read those and, again, increase that volume of their reading. We've been looking for something in Chinese, and last time you may recall I said we were able to find several things in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking students, our immersion students, but we hadn't had much luck with Chinese, but we did find some. So I've been talking with Ms. Garner about what we would do in that area. So that's something we would like to purchase. They have series like the Olympiads and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And while they don't have as rich of a connection to science and social studies, it definitely gives them something that they would be interested in reading in that dual language class.
Now, is that Chinese for the new middle school?
Yes.
Chinese curriculum? Okay.
Yeah.
Do the elementary schools already have the DOI programs? Do they already have something in Chinese on the elementary level?
I do believe they have texts in their classrooms that are in that target language, and was something, again, that we've had a lot of luck with for Spanish, but we finally came across some for Chinese too, to supplement them. And we know already that there are some titles that are not in any of the large vendors that we've talked to. So that would be where we go to Amazon to get kind of those singletons that are missing to finish that out. We have about $200,000 left in that budget, and whatever these next step pieces would be would certainly not exceed that. And you're already approving Barnes & Noble, so we wouldn't have a situation where we went over $100,000 where we need to come back to you. These would be much smaller purchases, these last ones, in smaller configurations.
If this is approved by the board next week, how fast a turnaround do you expect the books to start arriving and be distributed? We would do the POs immediately. We are checking them to see which pieces are missing, like from our original order, to get all those odds and ends kind of cleaned up. We would put those purchase orders in the next week or so after the board meeting. We have gotten the ones we've ordered, we've gotten within
2 or 3 weeks. What we are working on diligently is that staff development piece, because some of this is new to middle school teachers. A middle school math teacher isn't quite sure what to do with a read aloud. How would that work in my classroom? So that's the piece we're working with the principals to determine what the best way to roll that out is. And we see kind of rolling them out this spring, sort of in chunks. Here's what you do with the read aloud. Here's how you'll use the book clubs. Here's how you can use them in a rotation, in a station. So by the end of the year, we hope to have everything rolled out. We don't want to put it all out there and then be overwhelmed and not know what to do with it. So it would be kind of a rollout of the different components to the program.
Great. Ms. Helms, Mr. Kiker, any questions for Dr. Healy?
I will say that you brought up a good point about our elementary and our dual language classes, and what we're seeing is more need for those texts in those languages. And so we are prepping for that as in the coming years as those libraries expand for those students, and just as at all of our schools that are DLI. And that's one of the areas that is expanding fairly quickly within Union County Public Schools, and really what makes us unique across the board, across the state. And so as a district, we have to prepare for more and more classroom libraries, classroom sets that are in other languages. And I know, several of our schools are even looking at to be international schools in multiple languages in that are offering. So that really puts our lens on what do the resources look like in those schools that have multiple languages, including our DLI schools. So that's something that we are planning for and preparing for in the coming years.
Have you tried Alibaba? Is it Alibaba? Is that the Chinese Amazon? Is it Alibaba? I think so. Maybe you would think they'd have some Chinese books we can get our hands on. Because in 3 years, we're going to be looking for high school text in Chinese. I mean,
yeah, that's a great point there. As we expand both at the upper levels and at the lower levels, we've got to think about our investment in texts that are not English texts, and in order to prepare those students across the board. So that's a great point.
Any other questions? The chair will entertain a motion to move this on to the approval by the full board.
Okay.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Ms. Helms made that motion. Thank you, Dr. Healy. We'll move that on to the board. If you want to do a consent agenda, that's fine by me.
Okay.
All right. Number 4, Shiloh and Sun Valley Elementary proposal. We have some principals visiting with us today.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry
morning.
for being late.
That's quite all right.
I'll kick this one off. So, as you all are aware, we opened up our second year of elementary school choice. Both Shiloh and Sun Valley Elementaries, which, as we all know, are physically located on the same grounds, have really been thinking differently about moving forward in the future. Shiloh is currently one of our last year-round schools. Both of these schools are dual language immersion Spanish. Sun Valley Elementary is also in their first year of The Leader in Me. And I'm sure Dr. Rogers is ready to get out of here because she needs to go to Columbia to the Leader in Me Symposium, which is happening today. So they came to us a few weeks ago with a really cool, innovative idea to convert their two schools together, to establish one school as a pre-K through second grade and the second school as a third through fifth grade. They have met with their stakeholder groups, parents, teachers, staff, etc., to get feedback. They've been to their site-based team. They've pretty much checked all the boxes. They came to the facilities committee meeting last week, about a week ago, had some questions that we wanted to get answered. And so we've asked them to come back and share with us. And fundamentally, the reason why they're interested, and they can tell you, we just think it makes sense. You've got two schools that are right there, back to back. Both are under capacity. And by doing this, not only will you be able to merge the two schools without any hiccups facility-wise, but you'll have consistent programming, you'll have a consistent vertical pathway, and we believe that in Sun Valley's case, you'll have enough empty classrooms that if we wanted to in the future, we could actually expand our pre-K offerings, which is really exciting to think about because it's a centrally located campus. So, Dr. Rogers and Mr. Spencer, I'll turn it to you for any follow-up, and can you let this committee know kind of the outcomes of your different stakeholder meetings? Because that was a big question. That
Absolutely. We, Mr. Spencer and myself, when charged to be innovative within our district, decided that we could align our strengths and offer something to our community that has not been offered before, and thus the proposal. Mr. Spencer is going to start with the parent themes that came out of our input meetings.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. I suppose in Shiloh's case, having been a year-round school for roughly 25 years, one of the themes that came up was as far as the calendar goes, because for our proposal to work, we would need the alignment, as Dr. Houlihan said, across all areas. So Shiloh would need to go traditional for these to work, to have students on the same schedule. We have done a survey. We've pushed it out. I believe, Dr. Rogers, at last check, I'm looking at the statistic, out of 255 responses, 71.5% said they do not have concerns with both schools being on a traditional calendar. So roughly 3/4. So one of the things that did come up in the plus deltas was, what would happen with that extra month of summer care or child care for students currently at my school if parents weren't planning on that at this point. So we are entertaining the idea of possibly looking into maybe some kind of summer program to sort of bridge the gap for the Shiloh families that were expecting to go back at the end of July rather than the end of August. If the case of pre-planned vacations had come up for folks looking ahead to intersessions, that would be something the building level principals, which would be us, would work with those families. Bottom line, we want to work with our families in every capacity, but if people had made those plans, that would be taken into account. And the summer regression was another item that came up, but we don't have current data at my school to support that what we're doing when we look at from a proficiency standpoint is making a significant impact on combating that. However, if we were to do something over the summer, that certainly would help with that. And a few folks mentioned about family preference and work schedules aligned to year-round calendar. And again, I think that would be an administrative standpoint where we would work with those families, given that if the board were to proceed with this, we're looking at a 6-month timeline to the beginning of school, which would give families a good half year to make arrangements and whatnot. But the bottom line, we were pleased to see that with the survey, we're roughly 75% did not have a concern with it. And I think my takeaway, having been at the school for 8 years, I know it's embedded in the community. But for this plan to work, as Dr. Rogers said, where we will be doubling our community, joining forces as sort of a super team here, I do think that this would be, in looking at our vision, would outweigh remaining on the calendar versus what we could do for our kids in a 5-year, 10-year mission.
We also believe we'll be better together. A little background number. So the electronic survey to date, or right now, we have 255 responses. We held 2 parent input meetings face-to-face. We're joined, about 160 parents came to those face-to-face meetings. So a theme emerged around transportation and start times, as the 2 schools currently have a 45-minute gap in start times. And so traffic congestion and the differences in start times came up. So for traffic congestion, especially with a car rider line, families are concerned about the amount of time they'll spend in that car rider line. So we are working with facilities and transportation to alleviate that congestion, closing the gap with start times, which I'll talk more about in a moment, and having safety directors to help us with any traffic flow if we need to adopt new traffic patterns and those things. So with another theme or concern that came up was if I have a child in the K-2 school and I have a child in the 3-5 school, I would now have to drop off in the car rider line and pick up at 2 locations. So again, families are concerned about the amount of time in the car rider line. So we are currently working with facilities and transportation where 3-5 car rider siblings could join their pre-K to second grade siblings in the car rider line. And we've been very creative and innovative about how that could work. We also would shorten the gap between the start times so that there would be overlapping drop-off times for families so that they run right through one building and run right through another building.
The other student walks to their school. The other school just walks on over.
Well, and in the morning, there is little congestion as far as dropping with overlapping start times. So we also in the survey asked about, what would your start time be? And we had, as far as you as a family, considering if you had to drop at both buildings. So 40% of the parents that responded to the survey preferred a schedule where one school would start at 7:45 and one school would start at 8:05. And again, that's a 20-minute gap in start time, reducing it from a 45. And then 30% of the families indicated they would like a 7:15 start time and then a 7:35 start time. And then only 25% wanted a 7:30 start time and a 7:50 start time. But we know that we need to close that gap in the start times. We also, a theme of before and after school care in both buildings came up, and they're worried about daycare continuing for their families. And so we can collaborate with the after school director on that, the finance department, to consider both before and after school at both buildings and how that might work. A theme of clubs showed up, and any traditions held at both schools would continue in some form, some fashion. And then with the bus drop-off, let's say I have two children that ride a bus, and one goes to building A and one goes to building B. With that shortened start time, the buses could run, and we're working with transportation on this as well. The buses could run and pick both siblings up at the same bus stop at the same time and drop at school A and drop at school B. We also, going back to that car rider line, and we thought at dismissal time that the older students could shuttle, the older car rider students could shuttle from the 3-5 building over to the K-2 building and join their younger sibling at the car rider line, and do that with buses. We're working with transportation on that as well.
So I think it's fair to say and safe to say that in terms of the idea and this kind of innovative proposal, most of the issues around the logistics.
Yes.
And, we've got 6 months to figure that out and to work with families. And that's all we wanted to bring it to you all now, is to give us the time to plan accordingly so that when the school year ends, and the summer begins, that we are good to go.
Just for everyone that's not familiar that may be watching this, could you go over what school is anticipating having what grade?
Yes, sir. The proposal right now before the board would be that Sun Valley Elementary would host pre-K through second grade. Shiloh Elementary would host the 3rd through 5th graders.
One other question I have. I'm very excited as a longtime supporter of Leader in Me that we're going to get 2 for the price of 1, almost for the price of 1. But Mr. Spencer, I'm sure it's been relayed to you that Leader in Me program is not to be taken lightly as far as the commitment of staff to really run with it. Could you comment on your staff's comments as far as adopting Leader in Me?
Yes, we have talked to the staff about that. We have had staff go to leadership days in the past, including myself, to Indian Trail last year. We have one coming up in a week or two, I think, at Rocky River. So we have talked about that. We weren't quite at the point to implement it this year. One exciting part of this would be that if this were to happen, in theory, half of the staff would have had 1 year with Dr. Rogers to help ease that transition into Shiloh.
The reason for that is because you're literally are going to be merging staff. So they'll have teachers from Sun Valley that will be merging with teachers from Shiloh. So there'll be a year's worth of capacity already built.
The staff is not fully versed in it, but they're aware of it. We've talked about it. They have talked here that yes, they would need some help with the programming, of course. They are aware it would help with behavior and help build community as well. I'm reading some pluses from my staff here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's exciting prospect.
Speaking of merging staffs, I want to address again for everyone, we don't anticipate, I'll use the term layoff, but we don't really lay off because we always have a need for good teachers. Do you have any projections as far as will you have excess capacities in teachers that we may need to relocate, or is it too early in the process to really have a feel for that? Or do you think it's going to be a wash, basically? It's a wash.
Our current numbers would indicate.
Okay. So you're just basically going to couple your two current attendance lines. You don't anticipate infringing on or any major changes as far as infringing on any other school. It's just going to be now instead of two little circles, one bigger.
Correct. That's correct.
Great. Mr. Kiker or Ms. Helms, do you all have any questions?
I just want to commend you folks for forward thinking outside of the box on this. I think it's a great idea. As Dr. Houlihan mentioned, I know there are some logistics to work out, but you guys are well on your way towards dealing with that. Sounds like support from the community. So I commend you for what you've done. Thank you.
Ms. Helms, are you still with us?
I'm still here. One thing that I expressed concern with that Dr. Houlihan and I talked about, and I appreciate the principal addressing it this morning, was our kids' retention levels over the summer, especially the ones that are going from a year-round school to a traditional school calendar. Even though some of our kids may do not a summer school, I know that's old lingo, but what about the rest of the kids that will not participate in that? What can we do to make sure that they are kept up to date, up to par during the summer, and to make our teachers' jobs just a little bit easier? And I also want to know, what is the feedback from the teachers? What were their concerns?
Did you hear?
I'll start on that. Thank you, Ms. Helms. I forgot to mention, last year, when we converted Walter Bickett Elementary, Benton Heights, and East Elementary School from a year-round to traditional, our curriculum teams and our teachers put together a summer intervention packet. It was basically a 6-week-long series of materials for reading and math that were aligned to our curriculum. And so that product has already been built, and we would propose to take that product, and when kids leave Shiloh at the end of the year, that would be one option that every kid would have access to help them with summer instruction and those things. And then, as Ms. Helms mentioned, we'll look at having our summer reading camps and other kind of summer schooling happening to bridge that gap at that school. So we're confident we have a product that's already been built, and we'll just apply that here as well. I'll let you all comment about what the teachers said.
All right. So the teachers, the site-based teams and the teachers saw a lot of positives with this proposal, especially an increase in PLC or grade level collaboration and the ability to pull everything together and have a strong base of tools and strategies to pull from for instruction. A lot of positive feedback surrounding the Leader in Me process as it empowers student learning and provides leadership opportunities for all. And the framework for Leader in Me also distributes and shares leadership throughout the school building with the staff and the admin at that school. The dual language input, the positives were that the dual language classrooms would have more flexibility to distribute the kids and have that common planning time, where now they do not with anybody on their grade level. Because at both schools currently there's one dual language class per grade level. Our teams felt that we would be building a stronger community and that parent involvement could increase. Now, as far as some of their concerns, things themes came up as, what do we do about resources? You know, if I'm in the pre-K through second school, I'm going to need plenty of resources for that. And that's a logistic where we could share the resources between the two schools. And then the idea surrounding an instructional coach. Would it be possible to have an IC instructional coach that had K2 or pre-K through second grade expertise and 3-5 expertise, so that they continue to be on the innovative side of teaching and learning?
Any other questions? Not, Chair will entertain a motion to recommend approval to the full board.
I make a motion.
Ms. Helms, would you like to second? So she's not audio right now. I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Ms. Helms is recorded as an aye. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing this implemented. Yeah. We'll see you Tuesday night, no doubt. Okay. Oh, I just want to get a plug in too for Indian Trail Elementary. I believe they're giving a presentation at the Leader in Me Symposium in Columbia today. We mentioned Dr. Rogers going. Okay, number 5, DLI expansion update. Dr. Breedlove.
Yes, sir. As you know, we have 14 DLI schools within Union County Public Schools. And with that, each year we are entertaining expanding DLI because it seems to be growing in momentum, as I mentioned earlier with our resources discussion. And so at this time, I've asked Jessica Garner to step forward and talk about her work with DLI expansion. I will say that we have recently met with a lot of different principals in our choice schools, and it's interesting to see the questions surrounding DLI and what it would take to expand into their schools as they think about what they want to offer families. And so I believe that Ms. Garner is here to kind of talk about 2 of our schools that have entertained the idea of expanding DLI. And so at this point, I'll turn over to Ms. Garner.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We are trying to get the presentation up. Casey's going to log in and get that up for you guys. So really this morning, yeah, turn it on. Can you hear it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So really this morning, I want to start with just an overall update on where we are with dual language immersion and where our programs are. And so once she pulls that up, we will be ready to go. Thank you, Casey. So you can go to the next slide. So I just want to start by talking about a few accomplishments. In February, Charlotte hosted a very large conference. It's the 7th International Conference on Dual Language Education. And we were honored to have 2 different school visits, 2 different groups of folks really from all over the country and all over the world visit our schools. They visited Shiloh and Sun Valley together, so they were able to see both schools. And then we had another group that went to Unionville. Got very good feedback on the programming at those schools, and just really kind of started some collaboration as well with us learning from the people that visited and then them learning from us as well. We've also had, and I have some samples for you, our communications department. We've been working with them, and they have created some beautiful flyers that are very nice professional looking documents. And I'll share these with you. These are posted on our website. And so they've created a district flyer, and you can take a look at that. And then I also have for you some examples of the school flyers that they've created. I just brought the one from Marshville to share with you. And what they've done with the schools that have a high Spanish speaking population is they've also translated it into Spanish, which is very beneficial. So I will show you that these flyers look the same in English and Spanish, except for the content, the language rather. And so these help our schools to market the programs and really just share some overall accomplishments of what we've done with dual language immersion in our district. This year, we've also moved our lottery to Scribbles so that it's an automated process. It's been pretty smooth. We've had 1 or 2 parents who've called and said, can you check my application and make sure it went through okay? And So that's going very well. It's the same timeline as all of our school choice applications. And then we have convened a district level parent advisory board for dual language immersion, and they had their first meeting in December. We'll have another meeting this spring, and each school has a representative on that board. Some of our schools have their own dual language advisory board at the school level, and so some of those groups chose a parent. But some groups actually said, we're going to pick a different parent who's not involved at the school level. So that's just a way for schools to give feedback to us and for us to share some more updates with them. And so this is the current reality of our programs. We currently have 9 what we call one-way immersion programs. And as a reminder, the one-way or two-way refers to the native language of the students that go to that school. So in a one-way program, it's mostly students that are native English speakers who are learning a new language for the first time. And our two-way programs, you have some students that are native English speakers, some that are native Spanish speakers, and they are learning the other language while also continuing to learn their own language. So they're boosting skills in their native language as well as learning a new language. And some of those students are actually somewhat bilingual, which is kind of neat. And so they continue to learn literacy skills in both languages. And this is our first year with our 2 middle school continuation programs, one in Spanish and one in Mandarin. So quick fact, as a school district, we have more schools with dual language immersion programs than any other district in North Carolina. We don't necessarily have the most students. Charlotte-Mecklenburg, I think, has more students in dual language immersion, but we have the most schools. And I like the fact that our model right now is very accessible to our families. The way that it's set up in our district, it makes it very accessible to our families. So I just want to talk you through kind of where each of our schools is with the highest grade level at that school. So Marvin Ridge Middle, and the M on these, there you go. The M on these and the S refers to Mandarin or Spanish after that. So Marvin Ridge Middle School and Sun Valley both have 6th grade science and social studies. And interestingly enough, they are both doing a semester of each. And Sun Valley started with science and is doing social studies in the spring. Marvin Ridge Middle School started with social studies, and they are now doing science. So it's just the preference of the teacher, and they're getting it in the same year, which is what the teachers at those schools do as well. We have 5 schools that are up through 5th grade. The newest one that came on board this year was Unionville and Kensington. And then we have 4 schools that are up through 4th grade. So we're almost fully articulated through elementary school. We are. We're going to talk about that in a second. So currently, East and Walter Bickett are up through 1st grade, and then Marshville, of course, just started this year, and they're in kindergarten. And I do have to say that these programs have really taken off. And if you haven't been, Marshville's only in their 1st year this year, but if you haven't been out there to visit that program, I would highly recommend it. They're doing a great job in their 1st year this year, and it's a neat partnership between the English and the Spanish teachers. They've done a really nice job with that. So what I'm going to take you through now is, if you look at these slides, the way they're laid out, up at the top you have the school year. So you can see that as the school years progress, I want to show you kind of the big picture of where we're going in Union County, really over the next seven or 8 years with immersion. And so this is this year. We have Marvin Elementary that is feeding Marvin Ridge Middle School, and we have Sun Valley and Shiloh Elementaries that are feeding Sun Valley Middle School. And then when you go to next year, so in 1920, as you saw before, we'll be adding Kensington, and they'll be going to Marvin Ridge Middle School. That top left group is our only group of Mandarin schools at this time. And then we add Unionville, so Piedmont will be coming on board next year. And Piedmont has already hired their teacher. She is going to be phenomenal. Really excited about that hire. Then when we get to 2020, 2021, this is where you see the bigger jump with adding 4 more elementary schools coming on board. So Poplin will go to Piedmont so that we have 2 groups feeding. What works well for our middle schools is to have 2 groups of students, because as they get further on for scheduling purposes, those classrooms get a lot smaller as the students go through, because it's harder to add to an immersion program. And although I will say that I do get calls every week from people who are looking to move somewhere to the Charlotte area. In fact, I'm working with a family right now, and she said, my husband's in sales, and we literally can pick almost any state in the country, and we found Union County because of all of your immersion programs. And so they're looking at moving here over the summer from California. so that they can join Immersion because they saw that we have such a strong program here. So, so Poplin and Unionville will be going to Piedmont. And then for Weddington, we've got Antioch, Weddington Elementary School, and Western Union going to Weddington because that was the only school that didn't have one. That would be the sole program in that cluster. So we're going to let them go to Weddington. And then when we get, so that'll be 2020 and 2021. And then we don't have any movement toward middle school for a couple years until we get to 2023. And so in 2023, the East and Walter Bickett students will head to Monroe Middle School. And then in 2024, we have Marshville going to East Union Middle School. Okay, so this is our current programming where we are, where everyone will be who is currently a dual language immersion student when they're fully articulated through middle school. As of today, that's correct. So the next slide shows you what we would like to do. So Wingate has shown a very high interest. Both of the schools that are interested, both Porter Ridge Elementary and Wingate Elementary, have a very high Spanish-speaking population. With the realignment last year, Porter Ridge Elementary got a lot of students from East who are native Spanish speakers. And both of those schools are sitting between 30 and 40% of their student population that is a native Spanish-speaking population. So they are interested in coming on board to have two-way programs that not only serve the native English speakers to be able to learn Spanish, but also to serve their native Spanish speakers to continue their home language and to learn English. And we have research that shows that students who are native Spanish speakers, when you serve them in an immersion program, specifically in a two-way immersion program, that they have much higher gains by the end of high school on their English assessments than do students who participate in a traditional pull-out ESL model. And I can provide that graph for you if you're interested. It is very fascinating research, but strengthening the home language of those students helps them do better in English. And so that research, you don't see the gains as the differences in the different program models as much through elementary school. The real gains start when those kids get to high school, when they start taking ACT, SAT for the college prep. That's where you really see the native Spanish speakers who've had access to dual language immersion really just blossoming.
The other thing I want to add to this is it's language related, but not dual language. We also have two schools, Rayview and Stallings Elementary. Stallings is another school of choice that is very much interested in beginning next year what we kind of refer to as an international studies program, which is really looking at offering foreign languages back on the related arts wheel. The county used to do that some time ago, but they're looking at adding additional foreign languages with your PE and art and music and those things, and really looking at innovative curriculum that would align to things like the Model United Nations and giving kids experiences around global projects, and not necessarily DLI fully, but at least giving exposure to foreign languages through their K-5 program. So another example of how we could beef up our language exposure.
And one of the things that we've talked about as I've been working with those two principals is really the difference. We've kind of got these three different levels. This, of course, is immersion, and they're not looking at immersion, but then you have either exposure or proficiency, and they're much more interested in a proficiency-based model for their students. So we're trying to figure out what that looks like with their schedule, and it may be that the schedule shifts significantly next year to be able to provide some opportunities for those students to become proficient, so in that international studies model. So one thing I want to just point out about this is, I don't know if you noticed, but on the last slide, Poplin was up there going to Piedmont. But with Porter Ridge Elementary is really positioned as a perfect school for dual language immersion because they're a split feeder. Normally we look at that as, it's not as great, but in this situation, the students that are naturally zoned to Piedmont would join the students from Unionville, and the students that are naturally zoned to Porter Ridge Middle School would join Poplin. And so Poplin would then be able to go back to their home middle school and join the students from Porter Ridge Elementary that are zoned there. So it actually works pretty well. And I will say that, interestingly enough, of our programs in fifth grade, Unionville has very little, they have very little movement in their programs. They started the year 6 years ago, I think, with 23 students in kindergarten, and they still have 21 in that fifth grade class. So people just don't leave the community. It's a very strong community. So being able to split Porter Ridge Elementary School would make nice numbers for a middle school class going to Piedmont and going to Porter Ridge because of the way that that looks.
You know, you won't have 2 full schools
Correct.
feeding into a middle school.
Yeah,
I feel like it's going to be
absolutely.
maybe 2 classrooms in middle school.
It would actually most likely end up being 1 classroom because you would have about 30 to 32 kids, which is very similar to what our middle school classrooms look like. And depending on, you know, how those numbers play out as kids move forward, each class, you know, you lose families for different reasons. And so I think it would work.
It won't fill 2 classrooms, but
Correct.
A guaranteed good 1 class.
Exactly. And really what we're thinking is with most of these programs. So for example, at Sun Valley Middle School, there are 27 students in that 6th grade class right now. And that was from Sun Valley and Shiloh come together, right? And there's only 27 total students because you got to, you know, we have a fairly transient community, especially on the western side of the district, which is interesting, but so many people move in and out for business purposes. And you can't add new students to immersion classrooms really after it's for the Spanish side. We will add them at the very beginning of 1st grade, but it has to be the right situation. And then after that, the only way that we will add is through an assessment that students do. And so, you know, we only run the lottery for kindergarten because they are learning so much in that kindergarten year in that language that we don't want to put our students at a disadvantage who come in that don't have that language ability. So it's through assessment that we add kids after kindergarten.
And that's the only knock I have on the program. The only, I don't want to say downside, that sounds too negative, but if you don't get in kindergarten,
Right.
you're pretty much watching it go by,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about our middle school sequence and what that looks like. So these are our students who are currently in 6th grade. They will have science and social studies in 6th and 7th grade. When they get to 8th grade, there's a course called Dual and Heritage Speaker Level 2 that is actually equivalent from a high school perspective to a Spanish Level 3. The content is a little bit different because it focuses more on literacy than it does on what a typical Spanish 3 classroom would be, which is, you know, sports and hobbies and some of the more granular grammar pieces.
I'll just add as a reminder, the middle school programming is something we're all very, very proud of. Most middle school programs across the nation will put kids in an elective course for Spanish 1 or Spanish 2. And we have done the research and in our opinions did not want to do that. We thought that would be a disservice to our children simply because they've already had 6 full years of Spanish immersion. There's no need to put them in an elective course. So by having them in their academic content to increase their academic vocabulary, they're going to be well positioned to when they get into high school, beginning to take advanced placement and other high level courses as a freshman.
For the, if you go back real quick, for the 6th and 7th grade, those, of course, they're not earning high school credit for those courses in the language, but we are providing the opportunity, as we do provide to all middle school students, to go through the credit by demonstrated mastery process in 6th and 7th grade. So in 6th grade, those students are taking actually this week the credit by demonstrated mastery, that first phase for Spanish 1. And so we'll see how they do, and for Mandarin 1 as well. You know, it's interesting because the content of Spanish and Mandarin 1, the standards are not vocabulary based. The standards are all skill based. But when you put a test together for Spanish 1 or Mandarin 1, you have to pick a set of vocabulary. And so if you're a typical Spanish or Mandarin 1 student, you're going to be learning about things that are close to you as a student so that you can try to relate that content to the students. Because a high school student, so my daughter's in 9th grade and she's learning Spanish 1, she's not learning any new content. She's taking biology, but not in Spanish, right? So her Spanish 1 class, she's learning the body parts. Well, she already knows her body parts in English. That's not anything new. So they try to pick themes that relate to the students. And that may not necessarily be the content that our kids have learned in the immersion program K-5, because our kids in the immersion program are going to be learning things like forces in motion in Mandarin or in Spanish. And that vocabulary may not show up, most likely will not show up on the Spanish 1 or Mandarin 1 final exam. So we'll see how the kids do. I mean, I'm hopeful that they will do well, but, you know, we'll just have to see. And we'll have some data back from that in a couple of weeks. So they'll do that in 6th and 7th grade. And then that 8th grade course does give them a high school credit. So at a minimum, if they stay through this, even if they don't choose to do the credit by demonstrated mastery or for whatever reason are not successful with that, they still will earn that 1 high school credit. And then when they get to high school, for the Spanish high school sequence, this is what we have so far. We have an Honor Spanish 4 in 9th grade. And then in 10th grade, they'll take an AP Spanish Language and Culture. And I've been talking to some other districts, and what I would also like to do, and we're kind of investigating this, we have a couple of years, is to maybe pair that Honor Spanish 4 with some type of an elective that's specific to immersion students that digs into the culture a little bit more so that they have a full year experience. Because of our 4x4 schedule, I would hate for them to have a gap in their language learning. So that's something that we're looking into. So they'll take AP Spanish Language in 10th, AP Spanish Literature in 11th, and then I'm working with UNC Charlotte. We have a meeting set up with their language department coming up in April, even though we're still 6 years away from this, to figure out what could a potential dual enrollment course look like for those kids to take an upper level college course in Spanish. So that's something that we're going to be talking through and seeing how they could get some dual credit with UNC Charlotte. And so then for the Mandarin, it looks a little bit different because College Board only offers AP Chinese language. They do not offer AP Chinese literature. And so what we've looked at for these students is, you know, they will have the opportunity to enter the IB program at Marvin Ridge High School. And so this is a course that they currently do not offer at Marvin Ridge High School, but in working with their IB coordinator, she said it's something she's always wanted to offer. And essentially what this course is, Language A literature, it would be a joint teaching opportunity between Lindsay Arendt, who's the IB coordinator, helping them choose the different literary works that they would study, and the Mandarin teacher, and they would read those literary works in Chinese and evaluate those in Chinese. So it's a literature course that actually is offered through IB in 17 different languages. And so we would offer it in Chinese. And so that would be a very rich literature experience in the language. And that's a two-year long course, as all IB courses are. So that's kind of exciting. And that's what I have for you. Are there any questions about any of this, or?
Did you say that you anticipate Marvin Ridge High would be the first high school level?
Marvin Ridge High School and Sun Valley High School will come on board at the same time.
At the same time.
Mm-hmm. And they already offer Spanish 4 and AP Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And Marvin Ridge High School offers Mandarin 4, and when there's an interest and enough students, they offer AP Mandarin as well, or AP Chinese language.
Could you weave in something maybe in grade 9 as part of the language class, something like Chinese history, like giving them the real and Spanish history?
Yeah, so that's what I would like to look at for 9th grade, where we have that Honor Spanish 4, putting some type of companion class that would be one semester of like a culture and history type course. We'd have to develop that locally. And so that's something that we are looking at. We've got a couple of years before those students come. So we're starting that planning process now for what that would look like, so that it would give those kids a full year opportunity to have the language.
Does Mecklenburg County, do they have a middle school model already?
They do, but their middle school model is almost self-contained, because Waddell is a K-8 school.
Oh.
And so theirs is a little bit different. Nobody does it quite like we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bet
Which
you
is
have a lot of people knocking on your door trying to
we do.
pick your brain. Yeah.
We do.
I want to commend this program. I think one of the essential job skills in the 21st century is going to be, if not recognition of foreign cultures, but also being able to speak the language. I think that opens so many doors for students that graduate from high school and hopefully on to college with this skill set. I think it's fantastic. I only wish my boy could have got in at kindergarten.
You want me to stay? Okay.
Okay, any other information on this topic? Okay, we'll move into number 6, Leader in Me Leadership Days.
Okay, upcoming, we have 4 schools that will have leadership days at their school for Leader in Me. What is nice about these days is that our students really are in charge of these days at the school. And in Leader Me schools, the students showcase not only their leadership skills, but also the goals, the missions of the school. It is the goal of these days that students all take a leadership role. They learn these skills throughout the year, and I think last year about 50%, when Benton Heights Elementary School did it, about 50% of the students had a leadership role that day. It'd be interesting when they do this, if they get 100% this year, but they have to kind of earn those rights throughout the year, and they talk about various topics. I think that there are productions by different students throughout the day. It's really neat for our community, for our business leaders to come in and see what's happening at an elementary level when we talk about leadership and what that looks like, and the pride and the joy that students share about their school, about what they're doing. And so I have those dates that I want to share with the committee and the community. Rocky River Elementary School, their leadership day is on March the 8th. Benton Heights Elementary School's leadership day is on April the 5th. Indian Trail Elementary will have their leadership day on April the 10th. And Sandy Ridge Elementary will have their leadership day on May the 9th. And I just want to encourage not only this committee, but anyone who may be watching to hopefully check out at least one of those leadership days and contact the school and come in and visit to see what's happening in those elementary schools.
I'll also add this a reminder, Miss Helms and Mr. Sides know that Leader in Me began at a school in Raleigh called A.B. Combs Leadership Magnet, which is where I began my teaching career. And we have arranged for our current Leader in Me principals, as well as anyone who might be further interested in exploring that. As an example, Ashley Smith, who's the principal at Sun Valley Middle School, and Mr. Spencer, who was just here at Shiloh, to actually go to A.B. Combs at the end of April. The principal there is the current principal is the principal that hired me when I became a teacher. I talk with her on a regular basis, and thankfully they've agreed to work out a customized Union County day for us to go visit that school. And so our principals are really excited about that. And if you want more information on that, I can provide it for you.
What was the date?
April 29th, I believe. It's a Monday.
Speaking of, before we leave the topic, speaking of Sun Valley Middle, I know that's one of our long-range discussions to move the Leader in Me program into the middle school. Are we still progressing on that? I know that's not an agenda item, but I just want to make sure.
We are, and in fact, representatives from Franklin Covey are coming here on March 14th to talk to all of our middle and high school principals about their middle and high school curriculum, which is kind of a brand new thing for them. And it very much aligns with the work that we're already doing, particularly around social emotional learning and college and career readiness. So yes, she is still pursuing that as a viable option, Mr. Sides, as are potentially other middle and high schools.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, number 7, college and career planning update.
And with that, I have asked Jessica Garner and Robert Filter to just give us an update of what's happening in the area of college readiness and career readiness on their end of things. So I'll turn it over to them.
Okay, so I'll start with the college readiness, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Filter. And some of these pieces we work together on, but I do want to share that we had a very successful Huntington Blitz for the ACT. Just a week ago, we had about 100 students in attendance on a Saturday morning who came out on their, as volunteers to come and learn about the ACT. So we're hoping that we see some gains with that. We have another session with Huntington Learning Center. They volunteer and come in and do that for us. And that's been a great partnership. So our session in April is right before we give the SAT school day, and we currently have 114 signed up for that. So there is still space. We encourage students to sign up for that. All of our high schools have the sign-up sheets, and they advertise that. We also advertise it at the district level. The next piece I want to add, kind of related to that, is that this summer we are looking at using some grant funding that we have to provide some week-long opportunities for students to really dig into SAT and ACT prep. We know that not all of our students can afford to pay outside agencies to go and have that level of preparation. And while the summertime is not when we give the school day, we think that those skills will transfer, that what they learn in the summer can be applied if they decide to take the ACT or the SAT on their own in the fall, but also if they decide to take it in the spring. So we are looking at doing an SAT camp and an ACT prep camp this summer. And then we're also exploring the idea of a camp working with our school counselors on, so you're going to be a high school senior, what do you need to get ahead on, and kind of looking to see if there's some specific students that we need to pull in to make sure that they're ready for all that your senior year entails with the application process and looking for scholarships and just kind of specifically targeting some students that might need additional assistance. So those are things that are on the horizon for the summer. And then the last piece I want to talk about is really just what we're doing with Navient. So I think, with implementation of something that's this large, grades 6 through 12, it takes a minute to get schools to be on board, to understand what it is, and we're still working through that. I think that I had a really good conversation with some teachers at Monroe Middle School last week just about what is Navient and why would you care as a teacher what your students are doing in Navient. I think that conversation went really well, and we're continuing to do some of that. We also have some new data in Navient because we've used it, and this data will just continue to get richer and richer as we move forward. So we can see at this point in the year that 63% of our students have applied to at least one college. And, the acceptance rate, of course, that's not all back yet, and we will gather more of that when we do our exit survey at the end of the year. But 21% of students have already indicated that they've been accepted to at least one college. So that's exciting, and we will expect that to grow. 60% of those students, of those 63%, have applied to a four-year college or university. So I just think that those are good data points to know. And then a new piece of data that we have where we're starting to track our alumni. So it's, we believe that, yes, we need to get our kids ready for college, but it's also important that they're not just ready to get in, but that they're ready to do well in college. And so that's going to be the next piece that we start to look at with some of the data. And so we can see, what % of our students enrolled in college the first year after high school. And so, this is our first year, and we didn't use Navient for the senior piece last year because it was the very first year, and we didn't want our seniors to have to learn something new while everybody else was learning it. So we gave our counselors and our students a year to get comfortable with Navient. So our seniors are using it in full force this year. And overall, it's gone well. But we'll be able to see what % of students enroll after the first year. And then down the road, we'll also be able to see what % of students graduated within 6 years. So obviously, those data are a ways out. But I think that will be good information for us to look at from a couple different perspectives. One is there's this term called summer melt, that is kids who were accepted to college but then never enrolled. And so I would love to know what we can do as a school system for that % of students and start to be proactive with, why didn't you actually enroll? What happened between when you were accepted and when you enrolled? Was it financial? Was it something with your home life? So, what ended up happening that you did not persist and enroll? So those are all data pieces that we can get from this now that we're tracking some of it to be able to help our students, because, it's great to just track how many applied and were accepted, but we want to see that they are successful. And if there's something that we can do to help them, then we would like to do that. And so I would say that right now we're in course planner season, and Navient's released a new user interface this year. They completely overhauled the way that it looks. And in doing that, their course planner changed a little bit. And I'm on the advisory board for Navient's, their national advisory board. And I am. And interestingly enough, their course planner is getting a complete overhaul, which is much needed for next year. And so we said, in this year, where we had kids who looked at one thing last year and they're going to have to learn something new next year, we decided not to do the course planner in Navient this year. So instead, we went with two tools that students are very comfortable with, and that is Canvas and Google. So students they are essentially filling out their 4-year plan, and we modeled this after the mock-ups that I've seen for what course planner is going to look like next year. So it'll be an easy transition for them. And the reason we put it in Canvas was so that we would have that data from the students even after they leave. So it'll be much nicer when it's in Navient, but at least this year in this stopgap where we're kind of between where Naviance is between the two platforms. This was just an easier sell for our kids. So they are building those course plans. Every student has been enrolled in a Canvas course at their school, 8th grade through 11th grade. And we have really said that our 8th and 9th graders are the target audience for this. We want our 10th and 11th graders to do it as well. Obviously, our 11th graders are almost finished with planning their personal graduation plan, is kind of what we're calling it. But we've provided some guidance on different pathways based on the level of rigor that students are interested in and what that might look like. And we've tried to disconnect it from registration so that kids can think about this as really just making a plan for all 4 years, so that you've met prerequisites. So if you can think about what you want to do at the end and then back map that so that you're prepared. What we don't want kids to do is to get to their junior year and say, I'd really like to be in this academy, but I really needed this prerequisite and I didn't know that that was needed. So this course plan is intended to help kids think about that earlier. And they'll tweak it every year. Plans change. You know, I don't know that anybody's 4-year plan has looked exactly the way that you thought it would. I laid out my 4-year plan for my college courses when I got to college. It was on paper. It was a big fold out, and I circled all the things that I thought I wanted to do, and it changed 100 times. And I think that's okay for our kids. We want them to feel the freedom to be able to change that, but we also want them to think ahead and to be planners. And our goals are to, really our goals for this spring and going into next year are going to be for our teachers to look at some of the reports that are being generated by Naviance. You know, if you've got kids that are interested in specific career clusters, for example, we want the teachers to know that, so that if there's an opportunity to connect a project you're doing in your class, supported by that empowered framework of connecting students to the real world through their curriculum, we want teachers to be armed with that data so that they can make those relevant connections for kids. So that's one of our goals. We're looking at how we can encourage teachers to do that. And then we'd like to increase our parent usage. I think that parents, you know, they have access now through their PowerSchool parent portal, and we've put tutorials on the website. But parents don't necessarily know what to do when they get in Naviance. They can look at reports that their kids have done, and they can sit beside their students and look at different colleges and scholarship opportunities, but they don't always know what to do when they get in there. So one of the things that we have planned probably for later in March is to do a webinar for parents where we can actually show them, and they can join from home, and they can kind of see once you here's how you get in, and once you're in, what does that look like? And, you know, what are some tasks that you as a parent can do in Naviance? And so we're hoping that that will increase our parent usage.
Could I make a suggestion when you do that? I'm sure it will be recorded.
Yes.
Maybe you might want to put it a link to that in Empower Ed somewhere.
Okay.
So that,
okay,
you know, ideally you're going one place to learn all about it.
We can put it under that parent resources section. That's a great
right.
idea.
The parent resources.
Yep.
Where it has all that.
We can definitely do that. So that's the college readiness update, and I'll turn it over to Robert for the career.
Thank you. February was CTE month, and as such, we have been spotlighting students at all the schools and tweeting out and recognizing those students. And part of that also, we had students recommended that they create a artifact of some sort to recognize CTE and what it means to them. And so we are going to award 3 student certificates. Students are probably multiple students at Central Academy. They used automotive parts and welded basically a person together from the automotive parts that could put information. They have a little stand down there to put information about the auto program for their catacrawls. We had students at Forest Hills design a T-shirt logo, and they had that imprinted on a T-shirt. And then at Porter Ridge, they created a CTE video. So we're going to recognize those students for those as well. They submitted those this past week, and we're going to recognize them today and tomorrow. So the automotive at Central Academy, Forest Hills was the architectural design and drafting class that put that together, and then the digital film editing put together the film for Porter Ridge High School. And then looking forward, we have had robotics competition, and all the middle and high schools have been competing now for 4 years. And we have actual robotics courses in 4 schools, and we're going to expand that. We have a couple principals that have asked. I know Puerto Rico specifically has asked to add that class as well to their curriculum. So we're going to look to add the actual courses to additional high schools moving forward. Piedmont High School, Dr. Tyson has asked to include Project Lead the Way engineering at Piedmont High School, and we have a program at Forest Hills. We have one at Weddington, so it's a nice distribution to add that at Piedmont as well. So we're looking to do that. The state of North Carolina is adding a drone class that they can get certified, the level 1 and level 2. And so that goes well with our aviation academy at Sun Valley. And so we're looking to make a determination whether that goes along with the aerospace engineering 2 or 3. And I'm working with the teacher on that, but it looks like we'll add that as well as part of that curriculum for that academy.
On that piece, I don't even think Mr. Fielder knows this, but I've had already conversations with a few other departments about that, because as an example, we recently saw at the joint BOE, BOCC meeting a presentation done by Mr. Mark Strickland that had drone footage of our campuses to give a bond update. And I've talked to Danny McManus, who is certified as a drone pilot in our county, to next year begin working with this drone program at Sun Valley on how do you potentially use this to benefit our facilities team, to look at roofing inspections, just a lot of different ways our departments can collaborate with this. So
yeah, that's great. I have a brother-in-law that does home inspections, and he uses a drone on a regular basis looking at roofs and things like that. So, so we're looking at that. The state of North Carolina is moving their computer programming curriculum from Visual Basic to Python. And so we will continue and pilot some of that. Some of our computer programming classes will continue in Visual Basic, and some of our new teachers, rather than have them learn 2 different languages, we'll have them start right away with Python as we go through that piloting. And we expanded AP Computer Science this year to a couple additional schools, and we'll look to continue to expand that. So finding computer science teachers is difficult, but we will continue to find teachers and train teachers so that they can we can offer that across the county. I met with the advisory council yesterday, and we're looking to update our engineering technology advanced manufacturing course. The curriculum from the state, and we have the local curriculum, we need to make it more engaging and interesting for students, and so we're looking for ways to do that. And then I also have a meeting tomorrow with the Workforce Development Advisory Board from the Chamber of Commerce. So again, just to get some industry feedback as to what specifically they might be looking for out of students, as well as ways to engage the student and increase that interest. We will publish here, and hopefully in the next week, summer camps for rising 8th and 9th graders. Generally, just a few of those include aviation and culinary, game design, robotics, fashion design, digital film, architectural and engineering design, as well as coding. And then we're also going to add this year coding for rising 5th and 7th graders to introduce them as they're going into the middle school.
Rising 6th.
Rising
6th.
5th and 6th, sorry.
5th and 6th.
5th and 6th. Thank you. And then one of the things I spoke with the advisory board about yesterday had to do with career recruiting. We have universities coming into the high schools, recruiting for students coming into their universities. What I invited industry to come in and talk to those that are career development coordinators and or high school counselors, pretty much know that that student is going to be looking for a career after high school, not necessarily a degree. And so they can share about their industry, share about their job openings. And if while they're there, they can do a quick interview, possibly complete an application. And anybody hired during that process, we can have a career signing day, hopefully sometime in May, to recognize those students as well. So looking to do that. And then I also met with the apprenticeship cohort, South Piedmont Community College. Russell Carpenter there meets with several industry people that are looking to add apprenticeships. And so we met there yesterday, and I invited them to come to the schools, again, to promote the apprenticeships, as well as pre-apprenticeship opportunities where high school seniors can go to school half a day, then go to work for training and the community college as part of that process. Griner Bio One is the main leader in that right now, and they're paying students, to participate in that program and looking for other companies to do that as well. And that's all I have right now.
As Mr. Filter closes out, I just want to put a plug in for him. He has taken on also the initiative in our strategic plan of making an interactive program of studies. And his department has been working very hard to film all of our academies and get interviews from our teachers that will be uploaded by Arthur Rogers in our communications department. And we are finalizing that, and that will be our first series to go live so that a student or parent can basically look at our program of studies. If they're interested in an academy or a course, click on that academy, and then you basically can have a visual of what the students accomplish in that academy. And so I just want to say to Mr. Filter, thank him for working on that, and that is going to be something that will separate once again our school district from other districts, because I don't know of anyone that's doing an interactive program of studies for the coursework throughout their district.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, we've approached two teachers, Mr. Dennis at Porter Ridge High School and Mr. King at Central Academy, that are working, having their students work to put some of those together. We have various people across the county that are taking videos and pictures, and they're putting all those together to create videos for each of those courses. So,
you must have been reading my mind, because one of my questions for Mr. Filter is, where can I go on the UCPS website to see all our offerings? At what school, and what some kind of synopsis about the class? Is there a current location where people can go to?
So the Career Readiness website has the courses and then and the programs, and if you click on it, it gives you a brief overview of what those programs are.
So where do you start?
Yeah, there is. It's not an interactive map, but it is a map that shows.
All right. Where do you start to get to that?
You go to the Career Readiness website. Department. Go to departments.
Under UCPS, you start there under departments.
Departments, career readiness, and then choose academy pathways.
That'll get you to where it is. I just think it's amazing. I think drones would be. I wish I could go back to high school and take a class on that. One of the challenges I still think we have, because we have so many great course offerings, is the transportation challenge. We can't offer everything at every school, but we want to make sure that every student has access to the programs. And I'll just give you for an example that hits closer to home. My son right now in middle school thinks he wants to be an automotive technician. Okay, so he's at Piedmont Middle, will be at Piedmont High. If he, because of lottery or whatever issue, can't get into CATA, is he out of luck? Can we transport him down to Forest Hills to go to their great program? And I'm just thinking of that because that's a personal example I'm thinking of. We've got to figure out a way that geography is not a boundary for our students to take advantage of these wonderful classes.
Right. So currently, and using that as an example, we do have a couple teachers that are, like, we have a teacher this semester that is teaching intro to automotive at Piedmont High School. Last semester, he was at Porter Ridge teaching those same courses just to introduce students to those programs. We also do that with our public safety and our introductory to construction courses.
But
then those Piedmont students,
see where I'm going.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
because so we introduce them, but we do have an opportunity, and Central Academy, although it is an academy program, we also have a whole cohort that are coming from other areas across the county to have those automotive 1, 2, and 3 courses. And so they can travel there to take those courses. At
CATA.
At CATA.
But there could be a chance of having to be a lottery, and some could miss out because of capacity issues.
Correct. That is correct.
So I guess my comment is two-pronged. We got to get beyond the lottery issue to make sure we have the capacity for these classes that have such high demand. And number two, we got to make sure that transportation's not a barrier. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a meeting and a meal at Porter Ridge High at the culinary class provided for us. And there was a gal who drove herself all the way from Parkwood every day. but she had the facilities to be able to do that. Now, how many didn't, and they don't offer that at Parkwood? So how many did we miss out? I just think that's the great opportunity. We have too many great offerings, but I hate to see anybody not being able to take advantage of it. And I was very encouraged, let me also say, to hear about your apprenticeship programs. I know from personal experience that especially building trades are dying for people. I mean, they could care if you could hold a hammer and get to work, they'll hire you, because particularly in this area, the boom in construction. Anything we can do to meet that demand for, like you say, students that are not going on to a 4-year college. That's not their thing, but they are very, very skilled with their hands, or in that kind of way, that we have the relationship with the private sector to be able to be, if I own an electrical contracting company, I know, hey, I can go to Union County Public Schools and I could find an apprentice from somewhere that can lead them right into the job, and in companion with the community college can continue their technical education in that area and licensing and whatever else they need. I just think that is another great opportunity for students that are not following. And I'm glad to see that we're pursuing apprenticeship opportunities. And again, that's something I want to make available to everybody.
So I will just add, number one, Mr. Filter and the team have really stepped up the quality and quantity of our internships and apprenticeships programs this year and last year compared to the past. It's really been an increase. Number two, we are and have been working on some very, what I would call, innovative new school models to address this issue, Mr. Sides. If and when we are ready to kind of go public and present some of these ideas, we will bring that to this committee probably in April. But we are working with current businesses in Union County now on a different kind of an approach, really to how we do school in a number of our different pathways and academies. So a little teaser, we're getting down to future programs.
All right.
But if and when we are ready to go for something kind of unique, we'll certainly come back to you all on that.
Well, then I'm gonna go back to my other comment. I'm going to throw out the challenge of the transportation and the capacities at our academies.
Yeah, that is a huge issue.
Yeah,
that is expensive, and trying to figure that out. We will work with the transportation team to figure out how we could explore something. But I will tell you that that is a common issue in this county that we are very limited on.
Well, if it was easy, we'd already be doing it, right? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Any other comments or questions? All right. Number 8, Health Sciences Academy. Thank you.
Sure. And this is informational. As you are well aware, we have students at the middle school in 7th grade that will be matriculating out in the next, by 2021, those students will be freshmen. 2020, those students will be freshmen. And so what does that mean? Well, if they are in a health science academy at Monroe Middle School, obviously we want their education to, in that sort of pathway, to continue, or at least make that opportunity available to them. And so we will be sitting down with the academics department, is sitting down with South Piedmont Community College, Atrium Health, and Wingate University on March the 5th to discuss what that looks like at the high school level as an academy, where students, when you think of health science, most people think of just doctors or nursing. Health sciences is the health system in general is so much bigger than that. And when you start getting into maintenance, when you also get into business opportunities there and financials of Atrium Health, for example, students can focus in multiple venues, multiple pathways, and end up in the health field. And so that's what we want to look at, not only just those pathways, but aligning those resources as well. South Piedmont Community College in the coursework that they have, Wingate University in the coursework they have, all ending up into some sort of health field, health-related occupation. And so we are really excited to sit down, to brainstorm, and to bring this committee at some point back a plan of what this looks like for those current seventh graders.
Bottom line, we'll be coming to you all probably in April with a proposal that would go to the full board in May to establish a health sciences academy at Monroe High School, and possibly one, if not two, feeder elementary schools to create a vertical K-12 pipeline. And what we would like to do is, if we're ready to do that in May, that would then give us a full year for planning, staffing, recruitment, marketing, et cetera. So that's, again, kind of down to future programs. That's just kind of a heads up.
Great. I think that's such an awesome program. It's really limitless on where it can go. So many areas you touch with that. I'm so excited to see possible expansion down to the elementary schools and then all the way through. That's just a great opportunity. I love the community involvement. I love the schools that are involved with this. That's just a shining star for us there. So.
Was that also the segue into future programs update?
It sure was. And on those, each month we kind of bring some things just to kind of keep this committee up to date and anyone watching up to date. In the coming months, is the months of testing. That seems to be a hot topic across the state in that, but it is just as part of what we do. We've got the ACT makeup, which is on March the 12th. Of course, most of our students already took the ACT, but we do offer makeups. SAT is on April the 10th. Remember, Union County Public Schools provides the SAT at no cost to our students, and that is unique to our school district. No other school district does that, and so our students get that benefit. And then lastly, AP exams will start at the 1st of May for all of our students who are taking AP. So it is prior to the EOCs and EOGs, which also take place starting in the end of May. We are getting into those months of testing for our students, and so we just want to make everyone aware of that and wish our students well.
Great, thank you. Item 9A, I spoke with Dr. Breedlove about this briefly yesterday. I've asked staff to consider what I call a life sciences class, which you might call a practical skills needed to survive in today's society type class. Could involve such elements as personal finance, learning how to rent a place to live, buying a home, dealing with taxes, finding a job, doing a resume, even might have to make the boys learn to cook a few things and teach the girls how to change a tire or do auto maintenance. But relevant life skills that if you think back when you graduated from high school and even college, you didn't really have. How many of us knew how to balance a checkbook when we graduated from high school? Well, I wasn't one of them. And some of these practical skills that will help all students, not just those that are choosing to go into a career immediately, but also when you go to college, you got to balance a budget. At least I did, had a finite income. So I have talked with Dr. Breedlove about this, and I would like to have them chew on this and look at this as a course, even mandatory to graduation, elective, what have you. I know some other states are considering making such a class mandatory. Back in my day, it was they had home economics and they had personal finance classes. And I just think this would be a very good skill set for somebody to have when they get ready to get into the real life.
Yes, sir. And so much of our work is dealing with content and specific to English, math, science, social studies, and beyond that. Many times we seem to forget about the whole child and the whole child development and what that really looks like across the board. So you bring up a very valid point there, and we look forward to working on that. I know we have spent considerable time talking about finance and what that looks like maybe at a high school level, but this goes beyond just high school. This is elementary, middle, and high, and with our work as we've talked about today with the leader and me, and in that, I think it all blends together on what the whole child education that we're responsible for in Union County Public Schools, and we take great pride in. And so, yes, beefing up that work is something that we definitely want to look at.
So why don't we put that on our list of long-range projects, and we'll revisit that at the appropriate time that you want to kick around some ideas.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Okay, number 10, our next meeting date, last Thursday of the month in March, will also be the 28th, March 28th, 8:30, same place. So that concludes our agenda of business for today. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Helms made a motion to adjourn. Second. Second, all in favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.